Hello out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to be here with my guest. I am Net Richmond. This is the Smarter Career Moves LinkedIn live show, and let's get right to it. So, Matthew, I'm so excited to meet you and have you here on my show. Hannah Morgan suggested that I invite you as a guest, and we both know Hannah. So she knows smart people. So for anyone watching, now we're on the replay who does not know you. Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. And thank you for the time. And to my new friend, Annette. And thank you, Hannah. Side note there. Appreciate that from a friend as well. So essentially, I was a victim of a circumstance back in the '08 meltdown. I was a recruiter since the early 2000s and was subjected to a layoff. And it kind of thrusted me into this new world of entrepreneurship. So since 2009, I've been the sole operator of MJW Careers. It's my career coaching business, which started off as kind of a recruiting quasi resume / career coaching. I was kind of doing it all because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Slowly away from recruiting, because we all know if you're a recruiter, there's no time to do anything else but recruit. So I veered off and thought, wow, I'm actually getting people paying me to do resumes. This is wild, because back in the day I would do them for hiring managers and not think anything of it. So and then I realized what an industry this was and how much different it is in terms of presentation than it was when you're internal recruiter kind of stuff. So I had to learn, taking my bumps along the way and spending money here and there trying to get this thing to work. But eventually I'm finally at a point now where I feel really good about my solution and feel good about the quality of products I deliver for my clients. So but it's definitely, I feel bad for the resumes that I probably put out in 2009. Sorry to those clients.
I know, don't we all?
And those were only $40, I think, or $25. So Yes.
So, okay, well, thank you so much. And again, I'm excited to be here. I just want to give a shout out to my friend, Mark Anthony Dyson, who is out in the audience. So thank you so much for joining us, and do catch the rest of it on the replay if you need to jump off. So, one of the things that jumped out on me when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile is the idea that you have this, backdoor approach to connecting with employers. And many people, you hear this, I hear this, they think that a job search plan is sitting at the computer and applying to jobs on job boards. And often they will sit there every day and do that and feel like they've really accomplished something spectacular. And as we know, that is not so. So can you explain a little bit about what the backdoor, what you mean by that backdoor approach?
Absolutely. And I will start off by saying you're exactly right. What people need to understand that, when the job hits the job boards, it's been through the ringer already internally. So they already try to consider someone internally who and any avenue's been exhausted before they got to go spend money on advertising and spend money, or I should say hours of sweat equity for a recruiter. So the worst thing you can do is just apply online and think, hey, I've done it all. I'm pretty good here now.
Yeah.
Maybe back when things were a little bit newer, in the mid 2000s, Monster wasn't such the monster, but nowadays, nowadays it's like, yeah, I mean, you really have to have the perfect circumstances meet where the recruiter's been looking for you and you happen to apply that day, which does happen.
Mhm.
I tell people still apply though, because you want to be in the company portals. If you want to work at Apple, you got to get your name into careers.apple.com, because internal recruiters are searching their ATSs, or applicant tracking systems.
Mhm.
So who knows if they call you out of the blue in 2 months because you did eventually make a fit. But having said that, that's just one layer. So if you're going to apply online, maybe just do it on a Monday and then fill the rest of the week with tangible seed planning. Is so the backdoor work. Job hunting is essentially just seed planning. All you're doing is farming your way through the network, seeing if you can get someone that may be able to help you eventually. So, and this is funny, I did a podcast last night. This was kind of what we talked about, a lot of this. And it's amazing that, I mean, we both kind of, me and the guest and I both had this notion that, when you look at it from a networking standpoint, immediately you think, oh my gosh, this is so much work. I got to go and knock down people's doors on LinkedIn and have no idea who I am. What am I going to say? What, if they don't respond, most people are just going to give up, right? And they try to kick the can on like a week-long effort, and then they're like, well, no one's responding back, so this is stupid. It's patience. It's a slow burn way of trying to job hunt. But what's nice is, think about it like this: you have 2 to 8 months is like an average job hunt, is what I'm hearing through some stats here and there that we always get, and it makes sense. It's about a half year. What's a couple months of truly trying to put your best effort in, and then the next 2 months, like I call it tickling, but going back and visiting those messages that you sent to people and following up and seeing if they're might have interest. And I don't want to dive too far down, because I know some of this will come out, but the key here though is not to ask, it's to give. So when you're networking, starting off, trying to do this backdoor stuff, then mainly just know that you need to be kind of understanding that it's going to take time. You need to be consistent, and don't expect people to give to you right away. You got to be doing the giving initially.
I love, those, particularly 2 points that you just made. One, that people try it for a week and it doesn't work. It's like, if I start an exercise program and I do it for 2 weeks and I go, I haven't lost any weight yet, so that
Right.
doesn't work. That's not for me. But it's so true. And I love the idea talking about, this transactional, thought process that many people have. And I have people, good friends of mine, that say, oh, I have to network, come out of work, I have to network. Oh. And they think of it purely as sort of going to someone often that they don't know and
Mhm.
asking them for help. And what people don't think about is, I'm sure we all do this in our personal lives. When I'm looking for a new vet, I ask my friends. When I'm looking
Right.
for a new hairstylist, I ask my friends. And that is networking, but it's all about the relationship.
Right. Exactly. And if you are trying to approach people that, just call it professional people, not your
Mhm.
friends,
Yes.
even colleagues. So I always say, I believe personally, I like the informational interviewing aspect the best, because people love talking about themselves and they love talking about their companies. If obviously, if they believe in what they're doing, let's hope that you caught them on a good day. But essentially, it could be as easy as saying, hey, you've been at Amazon for 20 years in supply chain. You're a supply chain leader. I'm a supply chain manager trying to be at Amazon as a supply chain leader. This is, you're going to go and approach this particular person on LinkedIn. Tell them about how you are passionate about supply chain, and wow, you are an ideal role. You mind if I get 5-10 minutes to pick your brain about, how you got to that point? And if the people are active on LinkedIn, again, there's a lot of variables, so they might not even ever be on LinkedIn. So it might go to the wayside, and it's just because of that circumstance. But if they are active, or if you see that they look approachable, this kind of thing, I mean, why not go for it and just put yourself out there? Because the worst that's going to happen, it's crickets. So, and if you do this with Amazon, you do this with Walmart, you do this with all these different companies, and then in the departments within these companies, I mean, bigger ones, obviously you got a big old pond. So have a tracker, have a scheduler, and stick to it, and you'll see some of these seeds might start to flourish.
Yeah, I love the idea that you talk about specific companies. And, I recommend that to people I work with. I'm sure you do too, that you should have at least some kind of a list of the companies that you would really like to work for. And that will help you, sort of determine that path. But one thing I think is a challenge for people is they say they want to, work at Walmart, or they want to work at Amazon. Tech is so big right now. Everybody
Right.
wants to work at those, cool companies, cool
Dang.
jobs. They don't realize they can have a cool job at a company that's not necessarily Amazon, but that's another story.
Right.
So, what would you say are some good strategies job seekers can use, to look for and find the right person that they should try to interact with, as you say, if they are active on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So first, I mean, people obviously that are common. So basic title searches. I mean, you don't even have to niche it down to a particular company. You could just do like your area. If you're only going to work in Denver, okay, so you're reeling it in a little bit, right? So you could start with just simple titles. But I also, in terms of like who to find and who to approach, it's going to be tricky with the bigger companies, purely because, I mean, I don't even want to know how complex some of these titles get in general in the industry, let alone within
Mhm.
certain companies, right? So you really do have to do your due diligence of researching what was their career progression on their LinkedIn. Are they
Mhm.
someone who is in your sandbox, or are they someone that maybe just the title shows like it might be similar, but in reality, they have nothing to do with what you probably have interest in. So you really got to do a little bit of research too in terms of finding those people, groups. So like LinkedIn is fantastic if you are engaging with some of these groups. Actually, have a lot of followers. I've noticed that LinkedIn doesn't do the best job with trying to filter out some of these data groups, nor do they do a real good job about actually promoting groups. But they're
Mhm.
still active in some of these larger groups, and I know because I still try to engage. But if you're looking at like LinkedIn groups, you're looking at like Quora. Quora is a great website for people that just give knowledge out. It's like a Reddit, but a little less wild
Yes,
west.
yes.
Yeah. So go type in supply chain manager, in Quora and see where, what rabbit hole you can go down. And then industry associations is a given, right? So like be active or at least try to be on lists and whatever interactions that organization's offering, associations like the supply chain managers of the world, whatever kind of thing. Yeah, I never know associations. I always just shotgun those, but you want to be vested in your future and learning and acquiring knowledge, and you're going to try to start cold messaging people. Well, get that thought leadership developing too, upskill. And so as you're researching these people, don't just research for you to start putting in your tracker. Remember, tracker and schedule. You need those two things to do anything. So hold yourself accountable and hold yourself sane by knowing who you've reached out to. But as you're doing that, start to understand, here is this manager I'm going to approach. Look at these things they have on their profile. Oh, I'm going to try to skill my way into this type of function or this type of function that I don't have already. So as you're also networking, try to also bear in mind your personal development, and you will see you'll start to grow and you'll start to adapt to the knowledge, and then you'll be able to kind of twist your way into how you're thinking about about that particular subject. You'll start to apply it in your own world, and then you'll have an opinion. Wow, now you'll start to be a thought leader, and then eventually you'll start sharing. So I mean, it takes work, but it's all about how much you're going to give in. I am a big believer of, like I keep saying, sweat equity, but man, does that really get you going? Because now, how can you fail when you are putting so much effort into doing strategic ways of job hunting, being strategic, upskilling, being strategic, networking? But for who it is, yeah, just do some searches, start simple, and then you can zero in. The more niche, the better, obviously, too, because it's going to align more with what you want to do.
Well, of course, you're so right about the industries. I mean, there are industries for just about everything. And, many of them have local chapters with, dinner meetings, or, of course, many were virtual, and some are still virtual or hybrid, allowing people the option. But also, I would imagine if you're going to a conference, maybe one that's not too far from you, that it gives you an opportunity to meet people in that industry.
Exactly, and have some intention. I've been on that. I've been the fly on the wall at some of those early networking events, and that's fine, just to kind of get a feel. But when you start to really build momentum and having a purpose for yourself and maybe your business or your career, whatever you are doing, as you go to these networking events, start having some intention and keep metrics. Hold yourself accountable to metrics. Numbers are a crazy way to keep goals going. So, I'm going to meet 3 people, and then I'm going to follow up with those 3 people next week. And then I'm going to follow up with those same 3 people in 6 weeks, and then go from there and see how their response has been. But you know what I mean? Like, hold yourself accountable to some metrics. It's amazing how things will start to be accomplished if you do that.
It is true. It is true. And I have found personally that if I have a particular goal, something that I'm working on, when I tell people specifically, this is what I'm looking for, and I tell people that, because I'm sure you hear this as I hear this. We work in the careers industry. We have friends that will say, "Oh, keep your eyes open for me. I'm looking." And it's like, okay, what are you looking for?
Right.
What's the job? What type of company are you looking for? And, if you help people help you, it really works to your advantage.
Exactly. I love, and that's the best when people are going after job hunts like that, when it's just kind of willy nilly. You're like, well, they might be on the bench for a little longer than they probably could be if they zeroed in a little bit. But I get it, And it's always the best clients are, the frantic ones coming at you. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to jump my process. I'm not going to go through different parts of my process to cater to this fireball. We're still going to go through it and at the pace we need to make sure we're doing this right. Because, it's only your livelihood and thousands of dollars at stake. But, nobody I put more effort into probably figuring out what eBay item they're going to get next. And
I know. And it's so true. And I'm going to ask you more detail about that. About the sort of this big mistake that job seekers make. And I think one of them is just lack of planning. But I do want to ask you, as a former recruiter and a coach who does LinkedIn profiles, LinkedIn is a huge, big, noisy place. I mean, although there's 850 million people on there, most of them are not active. I would say that, maybe 50%. I don't know what the percentage is off the top of my head, but can you share a few things that people we talked a lot about the engagement that people can do on their profiles, to make somebody want to call them, contact them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, be invisible, meaning, having some activity, which I think is a given. A lot of people won't want to post, though. It won't be harmful for you to post once a week an article that maybe a thought leader you've been trying to target has shared, and you can post and share it on your wall. They're going to see that you shared it, right? And then maybe leave a little comment. Hey, here's my thoughts on this stuff. If you do that once a week, at least, I don't know what the algorithms do. I mean, that's an Andy Foote question, but at least you can maybe assume it shows that you're active. But if activities first. Second is when you want to optimize your profile, you have to play their game. So they're constantly changing things and whatever, but you want to maximize everything. I mean, you don't need a bunch of videos and stuff like that. But I mean, if they auto-populate your school, click it, because that stuff's starting to get filtered into LinkedIn recruiter software or wherever else they're going to start doing their Boolean stuff. And so you want to be able to make sure you're being found by the things that you can actually control. And then next, when it comes to the branding, so I'm a big advocate of your career snapshot stuff. I like your this work history will pretty much take care of what your journey's been. So I'm not a big believer of hey, starting off going, I've been doing this for this long and this. It's yeah, we know we can just scroll down. We need to know what you're going to do for me as a hiring manager. And I know value's been thrown around a lot. I don't even know if it's the pandemic maybe or whatever, but it makes sense because if you have a value offering and you want someone to pay you every couple of weeks to do something, you need to convince them that you're the person. And I mean, people always, I don't want to veer off too far, but people always think, and I was a recruiter, so from this perspective, but people always think we have it against them. It's no, it's just a pain in the butt to get with the hiring team, post and advertise, source, interview, offer and do negotiations, induction, and onboarding, and then training. We don't want to keep doing this as hiring managers, and it pulls them away from their projects. So that's why, right? So they don't want to see a resume that's going to be taking them, 15 years to get through. They can tell what you've been doing. Just start off the profile with a biggest bang for your buck of what you can do for these people reading it. What's your brand all about? What are you good at and have value that people should pay you to do? And so that's my biggest lead in for the header should have some sort of title, because now Google's picking up more of the Boolean search with titles for LinkedIn. So have the title so you are being found. If you're a production supervisor, make sure you have production supervisor in there somewhere. And then have some sort of little brand statement of production supervisor, that with a sustained history of, and then maybe going to some, with production, it's all about efficiency and productivity, something with that, because that's what the hiring managers are going to want to know. Can you handle us getting the workflow, right? And then as you get to the summary, build out a nice paragraph and maybe some bullet points about here's why I'm going to be the town hall to your headaches. If because of your world that's being disrupted by not having enough talent. And then now I'm going to make your life easier. And here's why I'm pretty darn good at production supervising. And you can have some nice achievements there. That's going to bring in, and that's going to show them that you're in the same sandbox because you're using some of the same terminology, things like that. And then start to just flesh in the details under your rest of your profile and ensure that when you're writing your content, every line you should ask yourself, so what? So if you're saying, I'm a production supervisor, I was managing a full facility, 10,000 distribution center. So what? Well, but we were on time for the 5 years consistent. Okay.
Mhm. Yes.
So now,
Yes.
right? So just think about them, not you, when you're communicating your content.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that too because when I talk about this, I tell people, if I'm the marketing manager at Nike, I'm doing the same thing as the marketing manager at Adidas. And it's what the impact that I have on my employer that is going to set me apart. And so that's where a lot of that stuff comes in. And, I am a champion of video. And what I mean by that, as far as the LinkedIn profile goes, is I know that there are many people who do not have profile videos. And, I recommend them to the clients that I work with because I have heard from other recruiters that it is a really good way to stand out because a lot of people don't have them. And so, how do you feel about that whole area at the top with the headshot and the background photo? And I worked briefly as a recruiter myself, contingency, and I hated in that being in that middle because, as you were just saying, the recruiter, the in-house recruiter, the hiring manager, they're on a different timetable. This is just like something they have to do in addition to their job.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but
No. How you're presentable, how you're presented does have. We all look at profile pictures and we all have assumptions. It's just nature of being
mhm,
human. So I always advocate because I moonlight as an actor. I always say have the actor headshot, blank wall, staring with maybe a slight little turn, and then you want to tuck it, kind of in so you're, kind of your chin in, and then smile. And you don't need to show the chompers; just have a nice smile. Wearing, depending on what you're doing. If you're a production supervisor, maybe a nice white collar shirt with a pen or something. And if you're a business person, have a sports jacket with a no tie underneath, collared shirt. So, depending on, where you're at, in your space, you'll kind of get an idea of what that presentation looks like. So I'm an advocate of, taking that very serious in terms of your profile headshot. A lot of people slap it together and I'm like, oh, that is not a good idea on LinkedIn. And then I'm not going to lie, I'm very biased towards the banner. I love the people that put like the TEDx's and like where you're in an event and there's 1,000 people. I personally could never quite capture a photo like that during all my speeches, but one of these days. But I do like that because you want to have some sort of authority or thought, kind of like, I hate to say thought leadership, but some sort of presentation that you're perceived as an expert. So even if you're, 5 years in, you've got some expertise, right? So let's show some of that off. And if you can do some of that in that banner, even better. Now, the tricky thing with that is like for us, we can write stuff all in that banner. Hey, I'm a career coach, I can help
mhm,
you with this and this. Whereas if you're an employee, you're really not going to be trying to think of selling a solution or something, but you are still selling yourself.
mhm,
So maybe if you get on Canva and jazz up something really neat that just stands out,
mhm,
um, or just any sort of photo that captures you being professional with some sort of where you're going to, make, what am I trying to think of the word? Excite the audience. I can't think of that.
well, grab their attention,
Yeah,
right?
you know what I mean? But I'm with you on that though. It's important. I think people who don't use pictures are doing themselves a disservice and they have no idea about it because they think the words might be the only thing that matter. But on LinkedIn, it's still a social network, meaning you
Yes.
you got to play the game.
No, I love that you said that because people think often that, well, LinkedIn is it's a business platform, but it's still considered social media and people want to see that headshot. And one thing that I hear from people if they don't have a headshot is like, well, they're afraid of some kind of discrimination, too old, too young, too,
Mm,
ethnic, not ethnic enough, whatever. And they forget that people are going to have to meet them anyway. It's not
right,
like you're going to be hired and nobody's going to see you until you walk
right.
into the office on your first day. And it is all about the attitude in
Mhm.
your photo because people we're visual beings. But I love that, and I'm glad that you mentioned Canva because even with a free account you can go on and take a template and just change the colors and so that it's not exactly like everybody else's and have your name up there or something because
Yeah.
my thinking is if you have that generic background it makes you look generic and kind of unsavvy.
Right. And it's like if everybody's who's looking for work or is in the kind of this professional social network that is LinkedIn, if you're not making those efforts to kind of be out there and engaging and sharing your expertise and listening to other people and engaging on, this kind of stuff, if you're not doing it, yeah, it might not hurt you, but I'll tell you what, the people that are doing it, recruiters notice that stuff. I mean, especially depending on what they're recruiting for. Maybe not all of them. Maybe they don't need to. Some of them, they're just trying to find a body that breathes and get the I've been there. We have to do inspections for these automotive tier 2 companies at 1 a.m. in Youngstown, Ohio. But the most recruiters, though, if they want to find the right person, you're telling me they're not going to go look at you on social and then go look at you on LinkedIn and go, wow, hey, this person's been sharing some neat stuff, or at least they are sharing things and are active. They must have an interest in their career and soaking up knowledge. They don't want clock watchers. The hiring managers don't want people that are Friday at 4, they're out of there. I know it's like, hey, we still are, against the man, the big corporation man, but it's like, if you want to thrive, get paid more, and have more opportunities, it's the people that are staying a little bit later and just getting the things done. So then they're improving the bottom line, some cost reduction, waste reduction, whatever it is, revenue increase, but they're doing some sort of quantifier and they want to work on that. And so, I mean, I once heard a story of it was a girl that had done all of her boss's work, or like she did like this presentation at first. She did the whole thing, and the boss was like, "Oh," and then all of a sudden she did like her whole work week stuff, and then the boss's boss recognized it and pretty much promoted that person. So it's like kind of a cheap way to get ahead. But I mean, like, people are doing this. People don't want to mess around and just, hey, I'm going to go spend a third of my life with strangers away from my kid. So I'm just going to kind of get in line and see what I have to do. It's like, no, they want people that are thinking ahead and are trying to make this thing, tick. So.
I love what you just said, and it all ties back to what you had mentioned earlier about value. And so many people, I'm sure they come to you. I have clients come to me and they want to talk about they're passionate. I'm passionate. I'm passionate. Well, you know what? If you are actively engaging on LinkedIn with your career, reading articles in your industry, you are actually demonstrating that you're passionate, because, I could tell you on anything. It doesn't mean much if you don't see any evidence of it.
Exactly. And that's the other thing is the whole soft skill game. I'm a communicator and a team player and all that. But I mean, it's like, I wish job seekers, and I mean, I get it. Some of the early career folks, they don't know, but as you get older and you get more established, I mean, you got to start understanding, the writing's on the wall. What do you do for me to make me want to pay you? And that's what it comes down to. And it's like, if you're not showing that off, yeah, you might be kicking the tires a while and the can down the street for your whole career, just because you never really, either didn't put yourself out there or just didn't strategize on your job hunt. You just kind of went along with the flow, and that's fine. Some people that's fine for, and that's great. I'm not wired like that. And I know some people that, are like my brother. He's fine with that kind of style and lifestyle, but then I see him struggling and stuff. So it's like, it depends on everyone's situation, but more or less, if you're the type that has gumption and wants to get out there and make things happen, yeah, do it by demonstration, like you said, and get active, because this is the world we live in now. There's no other spots you're missing out on. Just, get in your sandboxes where your target audience lives. Majority of us are in LinkedIn, but and get in those sandboxes and start throwing some sand.
Well, one of the things also that I noticed on your profile is that you coach people to eliminate what's holding them back in their job search. And I think that's interesting. I think sometimes, excuse me, it may be fear. People that they're working on their own resume or LinkedIn profile, and they're working on it for 6 months because they really, they don't want to really get out there. So what would you say is sort of the biggest mistake most people make that holds them back in their job search?
Well, I think what we said earlier probably might be tied. Twofold. So I'll say the first one probably is strategy, right? Preparation, having an intent. Going, I'm going to do this Monday, Tuesday. That's why my career coaching program is 6 weeks. Every Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you have things to cross off every hour, every couple hours, give or take, whatever the day is. So like, there's actual things we need to be doing and crossing off, so people don't have to guess. But if you're, kind of DIYing your job hunt, just start off by simply having a calendar first and a tracker and then start to have a means, right? Start to build up your means. What are you going to do? Are you going to share this? Or are you going to post this? Or are you going to whatever? Start to kind of, and you can even Google this stuff. People have lists like this and things all over. So just start simple. But I think what gets in their way the most, other than lack of preparation, is confidence. Because so when job hunting, like I said earlier, it's not this, and we're not building rockets. I love that analogy, but it always works because literally whoever builds rockets is brilliant. But it's like you are just trying to get somebody to, look at you in person and hopefully give you a chance to talk to them about how neat you are. And it's like, so don't think of it like, the reason why we try to make it so hard, I guess, is because again, it's time consuming and it's costly. So there's a lot of things in the way from you meeting that person that has a decision. But if you do it smart and you get to the core of what their needs are and then present yourself as that troubleshooter and that, again, tiling all of their pains, they'll most likely want to talk to you. But then when you get in there, you got to have the confidence. So I think confidence is where a lot of my clients will lack of, either confidence, I'm not sure how to start the job hunt, or confidence like during an interview. And so a lot of that is just preparing with knowledge, because knowledge will get you the confidence. And it's not like knowledge of a medical exam. You're not trying to be a doctor. One day to do this thing. This is just one interview. They got 10 things on this job you're going to be doing. And you've been doing this type of work for 5 years already. Can you do these 10 things? If so, show them you can, and then talk about it during the interview. Because now you're going to be resonating with them, because you're just talking about stuff they care about. You're not talking about stuff that you generally did that was really cool. Now, if you don't have a lot of things that resonate with them, you could bring in the cool things, but get to their point. They don't want to spend much more time in that room than they have to. So get them to understanding that by doing that, you got to have confidence.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, because I know you do one-on-one coaching, different kinds of coaching, but interview coaching specifically, and I think that is one of the areas where people do stumble a lot. And I'd like to have your thoughts on, sort of prepping in advance, not, memorizing things, but I have found with people that I've talked to, people I've worked with, that often, if they're not somewhat prepared, they ramble, and if they get that, tell me about yourself. It's like, well, in college, I knew that this, and it's like 10 minutes later, the interviewer's like, oh, So what would be your advice? Do you advocate for prepping, and how much, and how do you do it?
Yes. And it's kind of piggybacking off of what I said about learning the job description, what's their needs, and then trying to cross off those boxes. So first and foremost, and this is how I write resumes, is I reverse engineer from the job target. And what I'll try to do is not only take the 5 or 10 tasks and put them into the resume, but I make it my own in terms of like what their accomplishment was. So, hey, if you need to handle the full project management life cycle, let's talk about a really unique situation where you did do that. We know you've done it for 5 years, but give me one that just gives them a little personalization, a little customization about your onus, a very cause and effect statement. And so, and I always tell people, when you're presenting the resume to the hiring manager, it's like the meal. And then in the interview room, you're talking about the ingredients. So have it in this quick, concise resume-esque line. And if you can't do that, you hire people like us that can get it to that point. Then in the interview, know what the heck that line means. So then when they go, can you do this? Oh, yes, I can do the full cycle management. In fact, you look at over here, this job, I was handling this neat story over here. Let me tell you about it a little bit more. And so you kind of go into that story, because now you're having, again, more stories that lean into what they're doing and what they have a need for, versus generalizing. The worst thing you can do is go in there and beat up a project 15 times. No one cares about this one project to hear about it. Every single answer. And so I've had it where I actually was coaching, and the person I was coaching was essentially saying, hey, I'm a good team player and I'm a leader. And then I asked her another question. That was about a lot of communication and team leading. And then, I was helping and I was like, yeah, you keep saying this. The more general your answer is, the more boring and the less likely you're going to have success. The more relevant and actual customized to you, but if it relates to them, meaning the same kind of work, that's bells for them in their head. They're loving that, because now you're someone who can actually do it, and they have done it. Proof's in the pudding.
Oh, that is so true. People and people don't realize often that people want to know, how did you do it? even if you're a great salesperson, your metrics are off the wall. Are those like that because you're just selling the hot new product? Or is it because you have, developed this way of building a pipeline that, that works for you? And even I work with a lot of people who have to say build a department. Well, are you just putting that ad, online, or are you going to your competition and stealing the rock stars and going back with people you worked with? I mean, it's a whole different feeling, right?
Right. Absolutely. And it's funny. That's it just in my world, HR, when I was recruiting full time, I remember my manager, one of the big things that stuck out was, he said the good recruiters recruit the person, not the requisition. They recruit the candidate because then you're stacking a pipeline. So when openings come up, you've got great qualified, ready to go people if they're still available to go. And those were the recruiters that were having the big numbers and having success. And the rest were, if you're just recruiting a requisition, meaning the opening, and every person you meet, all you're doing is vetting them for this job and you're tossing them to the side after, you're going to be struggling to keep up. So exactly, you got to give some sort of scope and perspective. And I think the resume, again, is your springboard to have those discussions and be prepared, though, for some of those questions, like you just said. That's great. I mean, hey, you were in sales, but was it the new product or are you building pipelines and cultivating relations? And so, you have to make sure you're presenting yourself with that knowledge and understanding of what you've done in your career. When people are like, I don't know what I've been doing these past 5 years, like they forget. And it's like, where's your brag book? Like, this was what you did. And I get it. We're constantly, we're on to the next thing. So you forget a lot of that stuff, but it's like, that's why you got to hold yourself accountable to track wins. So when this stuff comes up, not only can we embed it in the resume, but now you can actually start using some of this as arsenal for the interview.
Yes, that is so true. And for anyone who is watching now, watching the replay or listening to this on the podcast, start writing that stuff down today, right?
Yes.
Start keeping track of it because it will make it so much easier when you need it, that, it'll save you a lot of time. So I have to ask you, what do you enjoy most about what you do?
Um, you know, that's a good question. I mean, it's like I love the consultation stuff, but sometimes even I'm like on my toes, like, what are they going to ask me when we're doing coaching? Because, we're trying to establish kind of things. So it's going to be nervy, but I do enjoy when I'm just talking with people and we're vibing, and we're having like a harmonious collaboration where everything's just kind of working. So I feel like that's probably I'm a talker. So whenever, and I'm working at home, obviously I always do, even pre-pandemic, but which I'm very fortunate to do that. But so anytime I can talk to somebody, it's like, okay. And I love being able to, the cold calling. I also I love sales. I just love it. I don't know why, but the cold calling still gets a little kind of, has its beats and but when we actually engage in coaching, like today, I got a couple coaching sessions, actually 3 of them. And I love doing, figuring out like what's logically acceptable for them to work, like who's going to actually want to pay them to do something, right, logically, but also does it align with their passion. And if you could find that kind of avenue and then help guide them to get down there, that's fun stuff because you've altered someone's life. But I am biased to interview training too. I do like interview training. I don't even know why interviewing is so boring, but I love training people through it.
Well, it's funny that you talk about, enjoying conversations. And that's part of the reason that I do these broadcasts every week, because I love to meet people. I love to have interesting conversations. I learn something from every single person that I talk to. And as we are getting sort of close to the end, I always like to ask, is there something that, we've covered a few different areas. Is there something that I did not ask you, we haven't discussed, that you feel is important to mention?
I don't think so. I would say, in terms of just last note is, again, be pragmatic. Hiring is wonky and there's a lot of personalities. Some should not even be in control of staffing, but they are. A lot of boneheads in the world, let alone just people controlling other lives, which is scary. But if you're pragmatic and very logical in the way you approach, and less is more. Again, I don't need to know everything, when you present yourself. Just be mindful. Pragmatism. Don't get too quirky, funny, cute. If I'm an executive, I have to have smarter language on my resume. No, because the people that are vetting you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Keep it a macro level operational impact, not nitty gritty bunch of acronyms. You can talk about that stuff in the interview room. I don't need that on my resume. I'm a marketing major who recruited engineers, I don't need to know the nuts and bolts. I just need to know from a process standpoint how you're successful.
Mm-hmm.
So keep it pragmatic, less is more, and then give back. Don't expect to receive when you are trying to plant those seeds. And then just know that they're not against you. I was a recruiter. I met with hiring managers. Some of them, were wonky, but most of them are just, just like the rest of us. So again, it's expensive and time consuming to do staffing. So just be mindful. That's why there's some hoops to go through, because otherwise we would never hire anybody, because we got to interview 1,500 people for one Google job. And, I mean, like, let's think about this, people. So be kind, and don't, be kind to the hiring people, and especially recruiters.
Well, I appreciate all of those things that you said, and I think it is important for people, to think about what they're doing and have some process in place. And the idea of being kind, there's a joke that's gone around about someone coming for a job interview and like fighting with somebody in the parking lot, and then they go and sit down, and that's the person that's going to be interviewing them.
Right.
And I've heard also that there are, it's not uncommon for someone to go to the receptionist and say, how did that person treat you?
Right.
I mean, would you say that is so too?
It is. I mean, I remember having instances when I worked at Johnson Controls where, because we had that kind of walk-in approach still, believe it or not, people used to walk in with applications and things. But it was true, because you would have some people come in and they were just so like almost rude, or like you owed them. God knows whatever happened to them getting burned in the past. But and then and my hiring manager's like, do you see what that guy, even perception, you see what he was wearing? Don't even bring that guy in for an interview, and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, okay, so bias up, but whatever. So you got to be mindful, always be proper, be communicative in a proper way, be kind, and I would say, rather than coming in hot, meek is probably the way to fall on it first. Be kind of someone who's going to be a little bit more conscious of what before they talk, because you're approaching someone cold and they have this upper hand of a role. Don't go in hot. They're going to come out here. They're going to see you coming in like that. So, proper, quick and short, and pleasant, you'd be all right.
Well, I thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been such a treat chatting with you. I learned some things, and I know our audience has as well. I've seen people liking and applauding as we've been talking here. So
Oh, good.
thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.